All right, let's pick up where we left off and let's talk about radical functions. In this presentation, we're going to talk about evaluating radical functions. And this is going to be very similar to what we've done in the past when we've talked about functions. So our procedure is we want to input the value for its variable, and then we're going to simplify the result or solve. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some examples. In this first round of examples, we're going to have that our number appears inside the parentheses. So remember, if it appears inside the parentheses, we're going to replace x with that number. We want to do the same thing inside our function. So let's go ahead and try some examples. For f of x, we have f of x equals the square root of 3x minus 2, and we are going to replace x with 1. So we get f of 1 equals the square root of 3x, times 1 minus 2. Now if we simplify this, we're going to use order of operations, so I'm going to simplify inside. We get 3 times 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. And the square root of 1 is 1. So f of 1 equals 1. All right, let's look at b. b, we have g of z equals negative square root of 6z plus 4, and we want to evaluate for g of 10. So we're going to replace z with 10. We get minus the square root of 6 times 10 plus 4. 6 times 10 is 60, plus 4 is 64. Square root of 64 is 8, and we keep our minus sign, so we get g of 10 equals negative 8. All right, so we've got some square roots. Let's go ahead and look at some cube roots. For example C, we have f of y equals the cube root of y. So if I want to find f of 125, I'm going to replace y with 125. And the cube root of 125 is 5. So f of 125 is 5. All right, last example, we have the cube root of x minus 3. I want to know what is g of negative 24. So we're going to replace x with negative 24 in my function definition. And so we want to replace all of our x's with negative 24 inside our function. So we get cube root of negative 24 minus 3. All right, so if we simplify the inside, we get cube root of negative 27. The cube root of 27 is 3, and remember that when we deal with cube roots, we keep our sign, so we get negative 3. So g of negative 24 equals negative 3. All right, so now let's do the other half of our evaluate. I'm going to start with some really basic examples because we haven't talked about solving equations yet. We're going to look at that in the next section. but I think that we can go ahead and handle this. So note here that we are replacing f of x with 4. So that means that I want to replace f of x with 4 in my function. We get 4 equals the square root of x. So now the square root of what number is equal to 4? In order to solve this, we talked about the relationship between squares and square roots canceling. And so when we talk about solving radical equations, again, we'll discuss this in more detail in the next section, we're going to do the same basic idea. To get rid of a square root, I square. And just like with every other equation, whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So we get 4 squared is 16. And on the right side, we get our square root and our square cancel, leaving me with just x. All right, one more. Let's look at a cube root. So we have g of x equals the cube root of x. Just like in the previous example, I have g of x equals -2. So I want to replace the whole g of x with -2. We get -2 equals the cube root of x. Now what do you think we do in order to get rid of a cube root? Well, to get rid of a cube root, I'm going to cube both sides. So we get -2 cubed is -8. And on the right, my cube root and my cube cancel, leaving me with just x. And that takes care of evaluating functions.